All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Gonna do another fantasy nerd chat with Tristram Johnson, aka Mask, our fantasy nerd friend from the UK, and Middle Earth Centrist, aka Woke Centrist, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Dustin Cubit, and I am Andrew, aka Nerdy Mindgasms, for the purposes of this chat. And we're gonna talk about the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power trailer, and how the right-wing extremist / white supremacist Lauren Southern has some interesting and kind of flawed takes on Tolkien in general and the trailer, and she has a problem with there being a black dwarf in there. And I want to also get into the trailer itself and compare what it looks like the show will be like to the Wheel of Time adaptation based on the negative fan reaction so far for the Rings of Power. So, yeah. So I guess, do you guys want to get right into that Lauren Southern video, or do you guys want to just kind of just briefly summarize your thoughts on the trailer before we get into that?
I think we should probably start with the actual content before we talk about people commenting on the content.
Okay.
So let's do the trailer.
Oh yeah, I didn't. I forgot to open that tab before we started the chat here, but yeah, a lot of people have had negative fan reactions to it so far, because a lot of the stuff doesn't really match with the lore based on the Silmarillion. That is basically the time frame during which the Rings of Power takes place, right? Here we go. I've got to. Okay. All right. I will screen share the trailer here, and I'll pause it whenever I want to say anything, and you guys just ask me to pause it, or just go ahead and start talking when you want to say.
We'll comment when you pause. It's fine.
All right, sure. All right, you guys can see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
Haven't you ever wondered what else is out there? There's wonders in this world beyond our wandering. I can feel it.
Okay, like right away, right there. That's one of the complaints that people have had already, that it looks like there are going to be hobbits in the Rings of Power, which according to the timeline of the Silmarillion does not make sense, because that happen, like the Rings of Power timeline during the timeline when it's going to happen should be occurring way before there were hobbits in Middle Earth, if I remember correctly, right?
But absolutely, and like again, I've heard the word used, proto hobbits. You know, as in like this is where hobbits came from, kind of thing. But I think one of the things that we need to state straight away is that we've talked about it being the Silmarillion. For those of you who aren't big Tolkien readers, just to be clear, this isn't the series of the Silmarillion. That's not what it is. The Silmarillion covers a lot of things. It starts way before the Second Age. It starts with the creation of Middle Earth. But the Silmarillion touches on sections of the Second Age, but it is extremely little, really, in what it covers. It covers specific parts, like the fall of Numenor, for example. And so one of the big points is, and one of the problems that we're going to have with what Lauren says later, is that Tolkien didn't actually say very much hard and fast about the Second Age. There's plenty in his notes and unpublished works, but a lot of it is still, it's not full stories. So he never says there's proto-hobbits, but he doesn't say there isn't proto-hobbits. So they've got very little to go on. They know that hobbits work well. They know that people who don't know Tolkien will be like hoping for, where are the hobbits? And so I think that's why they've thrown them in there. Do I think they should have hobbits? No, I don't think they were necessary. I think they should have focused on so much else that's already there. But yeah, it's not in the lore, but it's not, I don't think it's the huge deal that some people mention, that you can have proto-hobbits and say, this is where hobbits are going to come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can see like you were talking about before we started the chat there, well, and like you were saying there too, Tolkien, he didn't actually get really concrete about a whole lot of the details of the lore in the Second Age, particularly, as you were saying. So they can take a whole lot of artistic license, and I can totally see how they would want to add hobbits to it just to bring in fans from the Lord of the Rings, or just general people who don't know much about Lord of the Rings but know that there are hobbits in it. And so I can see why hardcore Tolkien nerds would have more of a problem with it. I personally have a problem with it for that reason. Like I'm totally okay with taking some artistic license, but you can do a whole lot without having to add in stuff that
Correct.
doesn't really make sense in terms of the timeline. What do you think, Dusty?
Well, I was a little distracted because I'm getting some stupid messages.
Okay.
What did you say that you didn't like about that in particular?
Just that there are hobbits there. I understand them taking some artistic license and wanting to bring in fans of the Lord of the Rings series, or like the Lord of the Rings movies, but that doesn't mean that they have to add things in there that wouldn't make sense. They could go in other directions that doesn't necessitate things like adding in hobbits.
Oh, so you're saying like there's not supposed to be hobbits around this time?
Correct.
Yeah. No, not
Oh.
during this time period.
I don't even freaking know, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know there weren't supposed to be hobbits around this era.
Oh, okay.
Because
Oops.
like I said, when I played the video game, it's 800 years before, and I don't know how far in years this is.
Thousands of years. We're
Oh,
3,000.
thousands. Well, what races are supposed to exist?
Well, there are
Dwarves
definitely
are
elves.
like one of the first. Elves and dwarves are like some of the first.
Elves, dwarves, and men, I
At
think.
the beginning of, well, again, not men like we see in the Third Age.
Good evening.
Like the men from Numenor?
Yes, exactly. It's the higher age. It's the men of which Aragorn is the remnant.
Right.
Yeah, the men who used to live for years, and that's like Numenor. So it's actually almost like a different race of men, like the ancestors. And this is still the age of elves and dwarves, and we'll see the Great Alliance, I assume, in this. But again, it does depend how far back they're going, because the Second Age, as I say, it's I don't know exactly, but it's somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 years long. So if we're at the beginning of the Second Age, it's worse than if we're at the end of it, right? Because if we're really close to the Third Age, then of course hobbits are turning up, Rohan and Gondor are about to be founded and stuff. That's a bit different, but I don't think we are. I think they're going to, I really hope that they're going to show us Sauron as a good guy, or pretending to be a good guy, and show his fall and the corruption and the creation of the rings. Because when he created the rings, he was considered like a genius, right? And like giving out gifts. And it's only then later that he uses those gifts to corrupt. And I really hope that that's what the series is about. That's what I want. But if that's the case, then we're thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see that downfall of Sauron's character. Yeah, that would be really cool. And yeah, I forgot that the Second Age lasts so long. So yeah, there's a huge time frame, and like you were saying, depending on what happens, it can make more or less sense depending on when it happens in the Second Age.
And the things they're going to concentrate on clearly are the race of the Second Age, because what's it about? The rings of power. So, 9 to men, 7 to the dwarf lords, 3 to the elven kings, right? So obviously that's who we're focusing on. So why bring in the hobbits? That's my point, is that in this, we've got limited time, right, in this TV series. Let's actually fully develop the dwarves, who almost got very little time in any of the others, in Lord of the Rings, because Gimli's like the only dwarf. This is a great chance for us to really get into the culture of the dwarves when it's at its height, when the dwarven kings are kings. And it would have been so, that's what I want to see. I want to see the elves in all their glory. I want to see Numenor at its height. I want to see them all getting their rings. I want these rings to have cool powers. And by the way, none of the rings' powers are really explained by Tolkien, ever. So, seeing all of that would be, right, there's your artistic license, right? Go tell a great story with that. And then I worry that in the urge to include all this extra stuff, they're going to lose out on the stuff that is there for the taking.
And when we get into later, after we go through the trailer and the Lauren Southern clip, that relates to the Wheel of Time adaptation, because that's one of your criticisms that I agreed with about the Wheel of Time show, that they added stuff in that doesn't exist in the book and removed stuff from the books that would have been really cool if they added it in there instead. So it doesn't really make sense that way.
Yeah. I feel that the story was missed out a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right, let's get back into the trailer here. Okay, I know I just started playing it again, but that's another thing that I and plenty of other people have complained about. This woman right here, I think she's some completely added new elf character. She looks so CG. She looks so fake. She looks like she's from a video game.
Some people have suggested that this will be Galadriel.
Oh, well, that would be cool if it is Galadriel.
Yeah. One of the things that is interesting, though, is people keep talking about maybe we'll have a young Galadriel. I'm like, do you understand the way elves work? Elves just don't age. An elf who's 3,000 and an elf who's 7,000 look identical. You don't become like an old elf. They are literally eternal. They don't live for thousands of years. They live forever. Forever.
Yeah.
People confuse the elves that Tolkien made with elves in other fantasy literature. In D&D, for example,
D&D.
Elves, which are based on Tolkien elves live a very long time, but they don't live forever. Tolkien put elves in as basically almost angels. They were the Fae. And anyway, it doesn't matter.
It's like in Tolkien, whenever an elf dies, it's like, wow. An immortal being just got snuffed out.
Correct.
Yeah, for sure. And that relates also to, and we'll get to this in the trailer too, so we don't need to get into it yet. But there's also supposedly young Elrond in the clip too, which also doesn't make sense because he's also, well, we find out in the Silmarillion that he's actually half elven, but he's still immortal. He still will live forever. So it wouldn't make sense for him to start off younger either.
No. Well, because he's already thousands of years old at this point. So anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. All right, I'll play this again here.
Yeah. There's your very interesting elf.
What was that, Tristram?
That was your very interesting elf. That was your black crew cut elf right there.
Yes.
So that's the other one that's caused some conflict.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because they're according to Lauren Southern, they aren't supposed to be black dwarves, even though Tolkien actually didn't really say what the skin color was of the dwarfs.
He doesn't talk about skin color hardly at all of anybody. Most people don't in books. When people describe people in books, they typically don't describe skin color until, guess what, the modern day. And now everyone thinks it's really important to mention who's black and who's white to make sure everyone knows that they're being diverse.
Yeah. Well, for most of human history, in literature in particular, it was like whiteness was normalized. It was people just assumed, oh, the characters in books are white, so you don't even need to mention it.
Well, and maybe if I'm reading it in Africa, I'm assuming they're all black.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point is that like I read Dragonlance, right? Dragonlance is a purely generic fantasy books, right? Really generic. Like back in the 80s, they were great. They were my introduction to fantasy, right? And in it, there's dwarves and elves and humans, and almost no one is their skin described as a color.
Raceland.
Raceland is because his skin is gold. His skin turns gold, and Lorana, the elven princess, is described as having very milky white skin, and Kitiara is described as having white skin because she's next to Lord Soth, who is an undead guy, totally dark and black. So the contrast is noted, but it's only in those kind of reasons. Like most of the time, they spend their time talking about hair or height or cragginess, and so it's interesting that these days it seems vital. I think about Harry Potter, and in Harry Potter, Dean Thomas is a black kid, but at first that wasn't mentioned. He was just mentioned. Parvati Patil has a very Indian name, but it wasn't said, by the way, she got brown skin, guys.
Right.
But
I don't remember them in the books mentioning Dean Thomas's skin color.
It does in book 5. And I think but he was canon black before then. Like we all knew he was black before she put it in the books because people asked her, is anyone in the year black? And she's like, yeah, Dean is. And then she realized that it was a big enough deal that she better mention it in the book. And so she did.
I see.
Yeah. That just made me think about, the character Cho Chang, who Harry is interested in and kind of dating in starting in book 5, I think. I don't remember. Do they mention her race? Because it obviously sounds like an Asian name.
They don't mention the race of anybody. They just make you assume by their surname.
Correct. But she clearly is, as you say, Andrew. She's clearly meant to have that heritage. And so when they cast her in the film, they did. Can you imagine if they hadn't? It would have been odd. Like if they'd done Parvati and Padma Patil as like blonde-haired Swedish girls, we'd have just been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Clearly the intention is for them. But the thing is, if they'd cast Ron Weasley as like someone with black hair, we'd have been like, what are you doing? One of the few things we definitely know is that they're a red-headed family. And so like the point is that the diversity is great and you should have it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be inserted after the fact. You can just have what's there. But if it hasn't been stated, by all means, use artistic license to add a bit, especially if that makes it more accessible to fans.
So one thing I'll say, if like the crew cut elf was just wearing like a wig of long hair, do you think it would have been more acceptable?
I do think it would have been more acceptable to people. But the point is, they don't have to.
Unless there's a story reason for that, we don't know.
Yeah,
maybe he's like this outcast that really wants to be different.
And that could be super cool, Dusty. Like you say, that could be super cool if he's like this elf who actually has had to be a bit of an outcast. But the problem is, this is my fear, right? That sounds cool to me, but can you imagine if that's the story, that the one black elf is the outcast who has to and like they took him and cut his hair in shame because he serves the elves. Like, oh my goodness, I'd die. I'd be like, I can't watch this because
the hair thing is strange because
they're always described. They're always described as long hair. But interestingly, even though they're constantly described as fair, and they are always described as fair doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be white blonde haired, because Arwen, for example, is definitely dark haired and she's described as fair. So the point is it going to ruin it for someone like me who is a big Tolkien fan that there's a black elf? No.
What if he's a half elf?
Yeah, but like I don't have to really care. Like if I can believe in elves, I believe in black elves. I just hope that they chose him because he was a great actor, and they didn't choose him because they said, right, well, we need a black elf, because that annoys me a little if that's the purpose of casting the individual. I don't know if it's
I
necessary.
agree.
But if he's an
Yeah.
excellent actor and they're like, this is the guy we need to play this part, and he happens to be black, fine. Do you see what I'm saying there? Like,
For sure.
To
I agree.
base it off of that actor's merit instead of their race. Yeah.
He shouldn't
Yeah,
be
yeah.
banned. He shouldn't be
And you
banned from
can,
playing an elf because
yeah,
he's-
that's a good point. Like you can have, if you have diversity because the actor's good, then that's a good point. But if you're just inserting a black actor just to say, well, we need more diversity, put a black guy in there, then that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's not. I find that a little annoying if that was the case.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Because they did something similar with the new Halo, but
did they?
It didn't bother me, but some people were bothered by it.
Okay. Yeah, but we can talk later about how, you know, people were bothered by that in Wheel of Time too, even though similarly it's not yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Go on then.
All right, let's get back into this here. Oh wait, I missed it there. That was supposedly yeah, that right there. That's supposedly a young Elrond, according to some
young
people.
Elrond.
Yeah, that's
supposed
what.
To be a young Elrond.
Yeah, that's what some people have been complaining about. That you know, like similar to how if that's Galadriel, it doesn't really make sense for her to look so much younger because elves are not supposed to age.
Literally like 22-year-old Elrond or something.
Supposedly, according, like I don't think that's confirmed, but some people have been saying that, and which is the spawn of the same type of complaint as that character that, according to some people, is young Galadriel.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. Have you looked at the casting?
Actually, no, I didn't. I just heard some people say that. Actually, that's a good idea. I'm gonna look that up. Rings of Power, and
just all I'm gonna say is my last comment on Elrond's age is he's born in the freaking first age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he isn't born in the second age. He's born in the first age.
Yeah, that young guy is Elrond, apparently.
Yeah. So he is.
Oh yeah.
My point being that elves are born clearly. So when they're born, I guess they are young for a period of time. But he's clearly already reached his majority, and he shouldn't age between now and when we see he's already.
Well, I got some hard and fast info. Isildur's a human, right?
Yeah.
Isildur, yes, for sure.
So in this, he's cast as a young boy. So what age would that be?
Well, Isildur can be a young boy. That's not a problem. He's the ancestor.
Yeah, because he's human. Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense that Elrond would be like young while Isildur is a boy.
No.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the caster too, and there is someone cast as Galadriel and someone else cast as Elrond.
Yeah,
because I was looking at the human characters to kind of get a pinpoint kind of around what time it is. Yeah. So if Isildur's a boy, you know, this is going to take place before like the big battle, you know.
Yeah. Before like the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring movie.
Yeah, it's basically going to be, I'm guessing 20 to 30 years before then.
Before the Last Alliance.
Yeah, if they're casting Isildur as a boy in this series, then it has to be 20 to 30 years before then.
I'm a little sad if we're already at Isildur being born, actually, because if Isildur is already born, that means we're probably not going to see the rings created.
Well, the weird thing is Celebrimbor has also been cast.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. I was just going to say, isn't that who makes the rings?
It is.
Well, it's possible they might be jumping around.
Yeah, and also
that could work. Yeah.
Yeah, like do both, like show the past and like in flashbacks or whatever. But but I'm really worried. I'm really worried. Like you know, all this like black, white, dwarf, beard, junk, proto hobbit. Like it bothers me a little, but only this much. What worries me is that these things are what everyone's going to be talking about, and it's going to detract from the main point, which for me is the story of the frickin' Lord of the Rings. And what I'm worried is that I'm far more worried about this, that in an intent to have as many recognizable names as possible, like getting Isildur into it straight away, they're going to skip huge chunks of the really cool stuff. Like I'd love like an intrigue one where you see Sauron as one of the core and they're building the rings and we, the watchers, know he's going to betray them. And then we see it happen and the rings go out and then they use them and they're fighting against the problems of their age. And then right at the last minute, he turns, corrupts the rings, and we see the 9 human kings start to become the Nazgul. And then they have to have like almost like a political side where the elves and dwarves and humans are all arguing, but they have to unite in order to fight Sauron. And I'd like that fight to be in like series 3, not in series 1. You know what I mean? And so
you don't want to rush it. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like, and the reason it's a mythos, and I know they can't really do this, and this is what really worries me. Not who's black and white and which freaking actor's playing who. I don't give a crap. And I'm not even very bothered about things like CGI like other people are. That's not my shtick. But I'm really bothered that they're going to take this beautiful opportunity and squish it in to try and make it work for the wider audience. And in doing so, we're going to lose people, like, not lose me, because I'll watch it no matter what happens. And I guess they know that, which is why they have to please the wider audience who won't. But like this story should really take place over hundreds of years. And I think it's going to take place over 20. And that is, a little sad for me, because I think they're going to probably change how the rings were made and how quickly they were made and how quickly Mordor was created and how quickly Sauron fell, and just go, we're going to take 600 years and we're just going to say that all happened right now in the life of Isildur.
That would be way too condensed.
But I think that's what's going to have to happen for them to hit this. The fact that they've cast Isildur already, the fact he's already in it as a kid, means that the end of the Second Age is nigh, which means Numenor should be falling a long time ago. So it means maybe we're not going to see that, which saddens me. But maybe they'll do the flashback thing. But that, just to be clear, dear listener, I'm far more worried about that than this races thing that has other people troubled. That
me too. Yeah.
Storyline wise.
Yeah, because the elf character, from what I'm saying, he's not a canon character that he's replacing here.
Oh, so that's one of the one who is a new invented character? One of the ones
it's made up. It's a made up character.
Okay.
And that makes sense.
Because I'm looking at the Wikipedia just to find out more about like the casting, but it does seem like, according to what the showrunner has said, that Isildur's story is going to be heavily explored.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and like that, you've heard of Beren and Luthien, yeah?
Yeah, of course. They're basically the precursors to Aragorn and Arwen, right?
You see, that's why Elrond is called half Elven, because he is a descendant of Luthien and Beren. And so, like, that sort of like, they're still, in all intents and purposes, have all of the glory of elvenness.
Yeah, they can go prequel.
Yeah.
I bet there's probably going to be some point of this series where he's going to have probably a storytelling session about his mom and dad, possibly. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I really like anime adaptations, because they can just take an entire episode and do a flashback in the story. That doesn't really tend to happen in live action for the most part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't.
They usually just take a couple minutes to talk about the past, maybe. And that's because, hey, we got to hire 2 new people, and they got to.
That's the problem, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. And just to be clear, Luthien wasn't his mother. She's like his great grandmother or something like that. He's her descendant, but he's not like
A direct descendant. Okay.
Yeah, he's a direct descendant, but he's not like it's been several generations. Just throwing it out.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And
I don't know how
obviously,
many. I'm not a Tolkien scholar, but
and obviously, Baron and Luthien, and Aragorn and Arwen are basically Tolkien adding in the Romeo and Juliet trope because a man is not supposed to be with an elf, and it's about they're both of those relationships are about a man and an elf who fall in love.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that Tolkien
About the mortality and
Yeah.
giving up the ability to live forever, which happens in both of those stories, I believe.
it does.
Yeah, willing to give up immortality for love. Yeah, that's a really
Correct.
good theme. Yeah.
And of course, Tolkien famously put those names on the grave of him and his wife.
Mhm.
Oh, I forgot about that. I
Yeah, but-
I think I heard that mentioned in the special features for the extended editions of the movies. They I that was when I first became a fantasy nerd, nerding about those behind the scenes documentaries. And in the one for the Fellowship of the Ring, they bring in some Tolkien scholars and talk about a lot about Tolkien himself and the Lord of the Rings in general.
Mhm.
And you see,
Also, Ready Player 2 did pay a lot of focus to Baron and Luthien's story.
oh, did it?
Yeah,
Cool.
Ready Player 2.
Did they?
You read it? Did you read it?
Yeah.
Remember,
Which
there's
relation-
a Silmarillion section in that book. Remember?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Never watched it, never read it. Don't know.
Well, the main character is like, oh yeah, I'm a nerd. I like the Lord of the Rings, but he never read the Silmarillion, so he was like, I don't know these characters.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if you read the Lord of the Rings and then went into the Silmarillion assuming you would know what's going on, you would probably like the Silmarillion is notoriously boringly written and wasn't even meant to be read as a novel anyway.
Well, at least like there are some stories that are great, like
Yeah.
Turin and Baron and Luthien, and then there are some chapters that are just descriptions of geography. You know, it's
exactly.
like
Yeah.
not entertaining at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can go
The
through interesting
Silmarillion
stories like the
is-
fall of
is
Gondolin, and then
more-
you can go geographical descriptions, like you said, or just lists of character names.
Yeah, the Silmarillion has more in common with the Old Testament than it does with a novel.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of collected stories by different authors in the same
but
kind
it's
of
also-
universe.
But it's very like the way it tells its stories is more like you would see in something like scripture or in a mythology than you would hear in a novel. Like
Yeah.
they say,
It
you know, and the armies
mythologizes.
came. It does, and like the armies came and they fought all day and all night, and then this army triumphed. You know, it's not like doing a blow by blow. Yeah, and
Yeah, of course.
it's more like that, and like Iluvatar sang and the world was created. It's more poetry, and like those list of names, you see that in the Bible, like where people go, and this guy was the son of this guy, was the son of this guy, was the son
This
of
guy begat
You
this
don't
guy,
get
who
that in a
begat this
novel.
guy.
And
Yeah.
that's the point, is that Tolkien wasn't really writing it as a novel. He was just playing in his world, and he didn't care if it ever got published. That wasn't his point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a fake. It's kind of like a fake history book about the history of
is.
Middle Earth.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, let's watch the end of this. The last 15 seconds of this here. That too. I'll just finish out the last 9 seconds here. But yeah, that's basically all there is to it. But yeah, that too has been said to be by some people indication that there's going to be a Hobbit. Although that could just be a child holding an adult's hand. But yeah,
Isildur,
it
for
wouldn't.
example.
Yeah, it could
might
be.
be Isildur. Yeah.
But yeah, if there are hobbits, it wouldn't really make sense.
There's going to be hobbits, I can
Yeah,
tell.
because hobbits were they around? They were just kind of like isolated and to themselves. Like they weren't world travelers. Like Hobbit, like
the thing about the
Bilbo,
hobbits is, right,
Bilbo
the
was
key
like an
point,
extreme
and again, it's
anomaly.
not a big deal.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Bilbo was basically an anomaly among hobbits.
Yeah, because he left the Shire. Oh, Tristram froze there. He was about to say something about hobbits. I'm just looking up. I just looked up whether there were hobbits in the Second Age. It says apparently would most likely especially as early as the forging of the rings, you would most likely still see hobbits lingering far east, even more eastern from their earliest locations in Lord of the Rings. So farther east.
But
farther
this
east
is
than
if
the Shire.
Isildur is alive though. Like when were the rings forged? If we're trying to gauge the forging.
Good question.
Because I would assume by this time, it's like they already all had the rings. If this is the case.
Yeah.
Well,
Rings of Power were forged starting in the year 1500 in the Second Age. Although Sauron didn't forge the One Ring in the Fires of Mount Doom until 1600. Okay, 100 years later.
When did Isildur live?
Well, he was some point in the Second Age, but I don't remember. I'm gonna look that up too.
Lots of these things aren't specific
because. Oh, you froze again.
Sorry,
there.
I know
now you're back.
My internet is glitched.
Also, Casa Doom is not is an active place at this time as well.
Okay.
Just one thing about hobbits that I think is relevant is that one of the few things that is mentioned in the books is that in the books, one of the reasons Gandalf uses the hobbits is Sauron basically isn't aware of them. Right? He says in the book, and Sauron has heard of hobbits at last, because he's heard from Gollum, who gets captured, that hobbits exist. And that's how he knows
that's
to
a good
send the
point.
Black Rider to the Shire. And Treebeard doesn't know what hobbits are either.
He thinks they're orcs at first, right?
Yes.
When he sees Merry and Pippin, he thinks that they're orcs at first, right?
Yeah. Or maybe children of some weird race or very strange.
Well, it just seems that hobbits do not get around much.
Yeah, well, they don't leave the Shire that much, we know, right?
Yeah, and they're kind of isolated in the area that they're at.
Okay. So yeah, it says Isildur. I don't know how to quantify these years though. It says he was born in 3209 and died in. It doesn't say the year, but he died at the age of 234. Oh, so he lived for a super long time.
Yes, because he's one of the old kinds of men.
Right. That's why Aragorn lives for such a long time, because he's descended from that line of men who live for a really long time, like hundreds of years.
Yeah, so according to this, the king of Numenor was still alive.
When Isildur was born?
Yes.
Okay.
And so Isildur was alive when the king of Numenor was corrupted by Sauron.
Okay.
So it's certainly possible that we may see Numenor's destruction in the series.
So that would be cool. Yeah. Yeah, if we still can, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, because Isildur was a child when Numenor was corrupted, when Numenor fell.
Okay.
So I'm guessing since Isildur was cast as a child, we're going to see the fall of Numenor.
Okay. Yeah, that would be really cool if we do.
We need to.
All
Really.
right.
It's one of the few things that we know happens in the Second Age. So if we don't see it, it'll be gutting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty important. All right.
And
Do you guys want to get in?
Since Isildur is in this, we're actually going to see a transition. So Isildur is born in the Second Age, and he dies in the Third.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And that's good. That's what we need to see. I just hope that we see the creation of the rings. I hope we see the fall of Sauron. I hope we see the growth of Sauron and the last battle. And they don't just go straight from one to the other.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. You guys want to get into this video with Lauren Southern commenting on the trailer?
Yep.
All right. I will screen share this. Someone in the comments said that they're here for Lauren Southern, and she asked me to keep an eye on you guys. I said, yeah, sure she did. Tell her she's welcome to join if she wants her to. I'll send her the link. I'd be very surprised if Lauren Southern actually knows anything about my channel. Okay.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a special returning guest, Lauren Southern, who I had the privilege of finally meeting in person over the weekend. Lauren, thanks so much for taking the time to come back on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you just dropped an episode about J.R.R. Tolkien, and people always bring him up because, you know, I was the compiler of the Anarchist Handbook. And people always bring up Tolkien as an example of someone who was, if not an anarchist full-blown, he was a pre-anarchist. Now, is that correct?
He was absolutely an anarchist. I mean, you might not like his version of anarchism because he was a monarcho-anarchist, which is a very fun little mix there. But no, he hated statism. Didn't matter if you were Tory, communist, fascist, hated it all. Wanted mainly to be a society like the Shire, where it was all... everyone just lived in this happy little libertarian realm.
So was that a surprise to you to learn?
Okay, so like you were saying earlier, Tristram, hating statism doesn't mean that you're an anarchist, and a monarcho-minarchist being pro-monarchy doesn't mean, or monarcho-anarchist rather, being pro-monarchy doesn't necessarily make you an anarchist either. Like, well, you know, because you still have a monarchy in the UK. Like, people who are pro-monarchy in the UK, I'm assuming that doesn't make them anarchists, and wanting to have a world that's like the Shire doesn't necessarily mean that it would be a libertarian paradise with no government.
Yeah.
Well, it's not big government, but they have to run themselves in some form or fashion. It's not going to be some huge government, but it's going to be some way to run their society. Because you're not going to need a giant bureaucratic government to run the Shire. It's just, I think that's kind of the contention here.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Learn this about Tolkien. How did you discover this?
Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen the new Amazon Tolkien Lord of the Rings version that they've created, and it's very woke. You got girl bosses in there, apparently a bit of queerness added to it. And
okay, where was their queerness? Did you guys see any queerness? I didn't see any queerness.
Not to my knowledge. I think she's saying girl boss because Galadriel is like wearing armor, but from what I was looking at, There are quotes that Tolkien said that, and when Galadriel was young, she was a warrior akin to like an Amazon.
Okay.
So it's not like she didn't kick ass. She definitely did when she was younger.
Okay. So yeah, that is canon then. Her her being in armor and being a warrior. So it's not something that they added in. Oh, it looks like Tristram got kicked out there. Hopefully he'll be back in a minute. But yeah, there's no fucking queerness anywhere in there. It doesn't make sense.
One of the scholars who is working on the Amazon series came out and said, we don't necessarily know Tolkien's beliefs, so we have to look into it. He died in the 70s. We have to make sure that we apply his work to the ideology and struggle today, and it's our duty to do that and interpret it. And I was like, maybe publicly Tolkien didn't say that much about his politics, but considering he's a devout Catholic, I somehow doubt he would have been an ally to modern interpretations of LGBTQ plus QRY philosophy and ideology. So I went
wait, one more thing. I love the idea.
Okay, so yeah, I mean for his time, Tolkien by today's standards, I mean it wouldn't surprise me if he would be considered racist by some people, and if it's true that Tolkien scholars who are apparently working on the show are trying to retcon his politics to make it more quote unquote woke for today. I agree that wouldn't be a good thing, but I also don't really see evidence of that in the trailer. What do you guys think? Are you back there now, Tristan? Oh, there you are, Dustin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the evidence is, there's an elf with dark skin. Therefore, this must be a woke interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens all the time. Oh, there's a black character. That means it's woke, rather.
Yeah, that's kind of the knee-jerk things that I seem to see happen. Is that they put a character with dark skin in there. And it's kind of weird that they just so heavily focus on that. Like, I know if a character is described and this guy has like a huge like mane of hair, and then you give him like some hair that's probably he has like hair, but he has like a pretty receding hairline. I don't see people getting upset about that.
Yeah. And like just adding a black, like we were talking about earlier, if they're just adding black people just because we think we need more black people in there, and they're just using black people like pawns to virtue signal, I get how that could be a bad thing. But if they just did that because they're a good actor, and so they cast that person as the actor, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it'd be pretty bad if they happened to select someone that wasn't white and they happen to be bad actor. Like, now that I've seen the Pot and Fane in Wheel of Time, I wouldn't want him replaced by anybody. He just does that good of a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same with Matt. Like, I liked the Matt that was in the series, and I'm going to be sad that he's being replaced.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully whoever replaces him does a good job, because yeah, he did do a good job of portraying all of Matt's mannerisms and his motivations, and being kind of wisecracking and kind of assuming that he himself is a bad guy, but he's always still doing the right thing, and he's kind of being roped into being a hero a lot of the time too.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird that people. I understand that people get upset when things are changed. I think she makes some pretty like bad assumptions later on in this video. But as far as like what was woke, or what was she saying? Queer?
Yeah, queer.
I know. I think someone would have to hold her feet to the fire to actually ask her exactly what she means by that, because I have no clue.
I don't either. Like
that
there weren't even anyone. There wasn't anyone making out. There weren't people with pink hair. There wasn't people complaining about transgender stuff. Or I mean, I don't get it. There wasn't anything like that in there.
Yeah, I have no idea what she means.
Oh, it looks like yeah, I don't know either. Looks like Tristram's internet is getting too spotty, so he probably won't be able to rejoin. But he said, because he didn't get to comment on what Lauren Southern is saying, he said, I don't think she's way out of order. She just has a specific point of view and has decided Tolkien thought things that he might have or might not have. I think she is guilty of exaggeration rather than incorrect. Compared to some, she has not gone totally overboard. Yeah, that's fair, I would say.
Yeah,
I just don't get some of her points about like why are there black dwarves, or there's queerness here.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell what she meant by queer at all. Like I said, someone needs to question her about that, because I have no clue. I couldn't see that in this trailer, but
Okay. Oh yeah, Tristram also said, by today's standards, I think people would consider Tolkien absolutely not diverse enough. A book with so many male characters based on Nordic and British culture, which is definitely a white culture. It instills monarchy and traditional families, and he's trying to build his own Anglo-Saxon mythology, of course. So I get that a true retelling line by line would probably cause a lot of controversy the other way. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I know even the movie caused controversy because Arwen's character got elevated out of obscurity. Like Arwen's character in the book I don't even think she has a speaking role, and if
she's
she
barely
does,
in
it's
there.
like very limited. Yeah,
I think she does have that romantic moment with Aragorn and Rivendell in the books that she does in the movie of Fellowship in the Ring, but I don't think they have these things about these parts where she's communicating with Aragorn through his dreams, and they have her agonizing about whether she should leave Aragorn or not. And I think I mentioned to you guys before, apparently they're even thinking about adding her to the Battle of Helm's Deep, but they couldn't make it work story-wise. So yeah, they definitely ramped up her role a lot because it's just all male characters almost.
Right. Because I know, it's her, and then you have, the similar characters. Is it Arwen? The Rohirrim woman who...
Oh, Éowyn.
Éowyn, who defeats the Nazgul King.
Yeah, the Witch King of Angmar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens in the book too. That it's Mary and Éowyn together kill the Witch King of Angmar. Which is another cool moment about the power of the underdog, just like how Frodo and Sam together, it takes them working together to destroy the ring, and hobbits are always underestimated by people, and Éowyn, because she's a woman, is always underestimated as a warrior, and then Merry, because he's a hobbit, is always underestimated too. But hobbits and a woman end up doing some of the most heroic stuff in the entire series.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then there's, the kill count between Gimli and Legolas.
Yeah, that's awesome for sure. Yeah. And then again, that's a way that they build their camaraderie with this taboo friendship between an elf and a dwarf, right?
Yeah, because they basically are known to despise each other. Like there is a racial hatred between the two races.
Yeah.
And then they fought, they they form this fellowship. They fight together, go through hardship together, and they become basically best friends at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll play more of this here.
The idea that someone who's such an extremely prolific writer, we'd have no idea what this guy thinks.
Yeah.
It's like, right? Like, there's no way of finding out.
Someone who called themselves a Tolkien scholar, right? And it's like his letters are public. You can go and read these. I just spent a night with some caffeine at 3 a.m. reading these. I didn't get a degree in this. And he's like, the guy didn't even believe in divorce, right?
Oh,
As
wow.
if that would ever be compatible with sleep around everything. He called women who enjoy casual sex abnormalities. Full-on anarchists, supported blowing up power stations to stop the expansion of the state. Like, there is nothing compatible.
I wonder if that's true. I haven't looked into whatever letters she's talking about.
Yeah, me neither. I'd have to go to like a Tolkien Reddit and see if they've talked about this video.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they have. I mean, if he's literally arguing for violence and terrorism to stop government expansion, that's a pretty violent anarchist thing to do. But
yeah,
he doesn't really say, I mean, I don't really know that much about his political views other than that just through his fiction he seems like kind of a traditional liberal or conservative. Maybe it's hard to say.
yeah, it's hard to say, but this guy died a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, so who knows what type of views he'd have today.
Yeah, of course.
Compatible with Tolkien's beliefs of sexuality, government, and the modern progressive, who obviously believes in massive community planning, sexual complete freedom. Just nothing compatible if you actually read his work. But no one does the reading.
I don't think but what does that have to do with complete sexual freedom? I don't think it's a politically progressive thing to believe in like casual sex for everyone everywhere.
Right. And
I mean,
who knows?
things tend to skew that way politically. You're more likely to be conservative if you're more likely to be more traditional about sex and relationships, but they're not inherent to each other.
Right.
Were you gonna say something else there?
Me? Oh no, I wasn't saying anything.
All right.
Reading. No one does the reading ever.
Well, and you're also discouraged from doing the reading because then it's independent thought and you have to press the independent thought alarm. When I was a kid, I was a big Dungeons & Dragons fan, which is obviously very heavily derived, if not directly derived, from Tolkien's Middle-earth. And something that after the Black Lives Matter protests and riots happened was Wizards of the Coast, the company that now owns the Dungeons & Dragons franchise. They issued some statement to the effect that orcs, which are the bad guy like thug race from Middle Earth and also appear in Dungeons & Dragons, like they're the easy bad guys to kill if you're clearing out a dungeon.
Yeah.
We were told that orcs are racist and they were going to make moves to remove orcs from the like pantheon, and let me assure you, as someone who's played this and has known many people play this, no one ever thought that orcs stood in for minorities. That's not a thing. The twisted logic that this has to be a thing means someone is really trying to reduce everything to.
Have you heard anything about that? About how orcs supposedly representing minorities? I haven't heard anything about that.
I'm looking it up now, and they're not actually removing those orcs from the canon. From what I'm looking at, they're trying to remove specifically things that could be seen as racial stereotypes out of their makeup. I don't know exactly what those traits that they're removing, but they were modifying them.
I can't think of any, like if I'm thinking of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, for example, I can't think of any way the orcs were portrayed in their makeup that seemed like racial stereotypes.
Yeah, the only thing I'm seeing here is that there was like certain modifiers that reduce the intelligence of these races depending on what ability you picked. But then again, I was like, okay, weird. Okay, so what they're doing is basically removing negative racial modifiers from all the characters.
Okay.
And the negative racial modifier, all it is it's so gamey. It's basically a thing that takes away from the stat, so lowers any statistic. They're removing that.
That's stupid.
Yeah, like I don't get it. Like, doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Okay.
I think what they're also doing
American,
is,
you know,
Oops,
Jim Crow.
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was looking at the Dark Elves, and because orcs and Dark Elves, I think they're basically approaching these races with nuance, because they were described as inherently evil, and
Are you
now
talking
they're
about
just
Dungeons and Dragons?
Dungeons and Dragons, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So now orcs and Dark Elves are no longer inherently evil.
Okay. Well, I mean, that could be interesting, actually.
Yeah, it gives you like more, you could do more with them than making them always bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, that could be interesting depending on how it's executed. That's usually an interesting trope in stories when it turns out that the bad guys are not all of the bad guys are all bad, and not all of the good guys are all good. There's some moral grayness in them. Okay.
All right. What is he
Jim
have to
Crow
say?
era or contemporary politics, which is very bizarre because they don't have electricity other than lightning bolts and things like that. However, now the inverse has happened. And can you explain to me what the Amazon thing but the good races are minorities. So how are they doing this like kind of double talk?
Well, okay, first of all, I love those situations where someone points out some supposed racism and everyone's like, bro, you're the only one who thought of that. Like, that's your mind. You know, you're the only one who thought the monkey picture was racist. And why were you thinking that, bro? You know, that's all.
That's true. I agree with that point there. But also at the same time, why do you care that some of the dwarves are black? A lot of the nerds who are pointing out legitimate criticisms like the CGI and there being hobbits and the dwarves not having beards actually are much more legitimate criticisms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oops. Okay.
That's always funny. But with the Amazon stuff, it's more so the addition of queerness to Tolkien's work. And this is what has been said by people who have watched it and reviewed it. They said, oh, there's queer representation, there's racial representation. It's all about diversity now. And this has also happened with the Tolkien Society, who are dedicated.
Who said that there's queerness? I still don't get where she's getting this. Where's she getting this queerness from? It doesn't make any sense.
Why is one of the actors like gay or something?
I don't know. What does that have to do with the characters that they're playing?
No idea.
Yeah. That's weird.
They've done whole series and conferences on transgenderism themes in Gondor, the femininity of dwarves, you know, all of these themes that Tolkien would have just found absurd. Gay atheism, I'm pretty sure was one of the topics the Tolkien Society held. And it just, they're diverting.
What the fuck is gay atheism? You're gay, but also atheist, and you're banding together because you're gay atheists? I mean, okay.
From what Tolkien's actual vision was, like they created a black female dwarf who has no beard. in his works, he's always said actually female dwarves are extremely masculine, have beards, and a lot of the
see, that's one thing that fans have been talking about. I mean, that's not a huge deal, of course, but yes, female dwarves are dwarfs are supposed to have beards according to the canon, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Gimli comments on that. No, it's I forget who it is, but someone's telling that who's talking to Gimli in one of the movies. I don't remember whether that's in the books, but I think that's referenced in some other way in the Lord of the Rings books, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
But I mean, it's not a big deal if they don't make female dwarfs have beards. I could see how maybe that aspect could be removed because it would probably look really cheesy if women have beards.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of research, and here's what I found. In the War of the Jewels, all dwarves were described as having beards, including women. However, in later writings published in The Nature of Middle-earth, Tolkien excluded female dwarves when listing the characters he imagined with or without beards, stating only that all male dwarves had them. So it's not really clear if all female dwarves have beards or not.
Yeah, there's a little inconsistency there. Okay. Yeah, that's not uncommon with authors too, to kind of change their mythology sometimes. I mean, even Brandon Sanderson, who we've talked about before, has made not major but minor retconning changes in his Cosmere and some of his books. Like, I think we talked about that with, was it Way of King? I think it was the end of Words of Radiance was changed slightly, for example. He talked about that.
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think we had talked about that before at some point, but yeah, I don't remember for sure.
I know there's a ton of different races though in The Way of Kings.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely.
And sometimes I get them mixed up because they look different, you know.
Yeah, the ones that I forget.
The Rock Eaters, and then there's the Herdazians.
Is it the Parshendi who Dalinar's people are fighing with the shard blades? Like in Way of Kings?
The Parshendi.
Right.
And those are just the bad, quote unquote, bad guys. And there's a bunch of good guys that have different races, like the Horn Eaters. They look different. There's the Herdazians. You remember Lopin, the guy who had one arm?
No.
He's a guy who always has like the goofy. He's kind of like the comic relief. When they were slaves, he's one of the people in Kaladin's crew.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember him. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he's a Herdazian, and their like fingernails are made out of like rocks or something like that. And they can have darker skin.
That's the Herdazians. Okay, I was thinking that about the Parshendi, that they kind of look like rock people, so I confused them with the Herdazians.
The Parshendi look like crab, like insect.
Oh, right, yeah, that's what I was getting confused about. The Parshendi look like kind of crab people, and what was the other one you just said that looked like kind of rock people?
Well, I know the Herdazians like fingernails look like they're made out of stone.
Okay.
And they kind of have like this weird color to their skin. And then there's the guy from the race that Seth is part of. Like everybody is very pale. I think they don't grow any hair and they have really big childish eyes.
Okay.
But there's a bunch of different races in Roshar.
Yeah.
I think there's 13. That's what they're saying.
Okay. Oh, wow. I forgot there were so many.
And the ones that look closest to humans are the Alethi, and those just basically look like regular people.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because there are some races with blue skin.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. What are they called?
One of them, there's one called the Natan, and another called Amian. There's just the Thalen, and they have like really long white eyebrows. There's the Makabiki, and they have like darker skin.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot there were that many different races in Stormlight Archive.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Okay.
Or fans are disappointed, but even if they just wanted to tweak a few things like that for creative reasons, I don't think people would have minded. It's the fact that they've made it the direct objective diversity. Okay. That's when I'm concerned, is you put diversity over the actual plot line.
Okay, well, like we were talking about with Tristram before, I kind of agree with her there. If you're making the diversity the objective of the whole fucking show, that could easily ruin it. But I'm skeptical that she's right about that. But if she is, that's bad. But if she's wrong about that, well, hopefully she is wrong about that for the sake of the show.
Yeah, I guess what I would only say is that it would only be bad if in the plot that actually matters to the plot. Like if we're talking about something, say for instance, say we're talking about Wheel of Time. And what if all the Aiel were like different colors and had different hair colors and you know, when we know the Aiel are supposed to be mainly like redheads.
Right.
And it has been made a point that only Aiel men have that color hair.
Right.
It's very much a plot point that Aiel has to look a certain way. And if they kind of change that aspect, I think that would be a big no-no. But if, you know, we're talking about something that has no importance to the plot at all, I don't really have that big of an issue with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's a good point. If it's important to the plot, if the appearance of a character is important to a central plot point, then it makes sense for them to look that way. But if that's not the case, then it doesn't matter if they change their gender or their race or sexuality or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I could see how some people could get upset if they change the gender maybe of a character. But if that is not important to the plot, then I don't think it's that much of a big of a deal. Like the problem though with Wheel of Time is you can't easily change a character's gender, especially if they are a user of the one power. You know,
certainly. Yeah,
because
there's a big difference. There's a big difference between men and women in terms of using the one power in Wheel of Time, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference there. But if we're talking about like super minor characters, like what if like for instance, what if Brigida was like a lesbian or something, and instead of having like some ugly ass dude, she always falls in love with like some lady. To me, it could be plausible, and I don't think that affects the plot that much.
Yeah.
You know? Like it doesn't really, because she doesn't use the one power. And Geidel Kane is not a major character in the series. He's super minor character.
Yeah, for sure. Let's finish going through this video and then we'll get more into the Wheel of Time comparisons.
Okay.
If that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
If it fit that there was a character that was just going to be black and they happened to be the best cast for that role, villain or good guy, great, awesome. Clearly that wasn't the priority. Clearly the priority was getting every single possible, checkpoint on the diversity list done. And they keep doing this with so many different works. Amazon.
Let me pause it.
Did you ever read that when you were growing up?
Yeah.
Is that by something Jordan? What's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's making like gigantic assumptions here.
Yeah,
that
if that's the direction, that doesn't mean that that's the reason that those people were cast as the black characters.
Right. Like she's making huge assumptions that just because they're not white, that it has to be for diversity reasons. Like, she's straight up making that assumption.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously, it can easily be the case that, like we were talking about, these black actors just did a really good job of playing the roles, so we're gonna have them play the roles. It doesn't, even if that's if that actually is the objective of the show, to have diversity, that doesn't mean that that's always inherently the reason that there's a black actor playing a character.
Right. It's like they jump to that conclusion first and foremost. Like,
Yeah.
I always need confirmation if that's the case, you know? I can't just jump to that conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Robert Jordan.
Yeah.
Those were great books.
Oh, Wheel of Time.
I don't know. We're in a bit of a...
Yeah, spoilers, but she thought that Wheel of Time was way too woke.
creative drought. And they're going and taking from some of the best pools of creativity from the past and trying to remake them, but it's like they just don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the same minds, and they're not willing to rely on the minds who initially created it. So they just try to remake it in their own distorted image.
Yeah, I covered this in the New Right, which came out 3 years ago now, because
yeah, we talked about that with Wheel of Time before, that that there were some changes that we didn't like and some changes that we did like. For example, episode 4 of the first season of Wheel of Time was one of, I think, all three of yours, mine, and Tristram's favorites, even though it's completely made up, basically.
Yeah, it's completely off script. Yeah. None of that is written in the book. Like, the only parts that are on script are this very small parts where Rand encounters a farm, but like most of it is just like made up.
Yeah, they added a whole bunch of awesome magic battles with Logain and Moraine, and I forget the name of the other. Alana's one of the Aes Sedai. I forget the name of the others who were involved in that.
There was Alana. I know Sister Strongjaws was there.
Who's the red body shoddy?
Leandrin.
Yeah, Leandrin.
Leandrin was there. But yeah, like I think also the General Aes Sedai in the Green, she's not alive at this period in time. So they definitely made some liberties there and changed some stuff up. But I don't even care. Like, they killed her off. She's been dead for a while, but she is there, and they killed her off like they should have. Like, there's no way she should have survived because she's not alive in the first place. But even with all of those changes, I enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, for sure. That was probably my favorite episode of the whole season. But it depends on what you do and how you do it, right? Like, another example, in the opposite direction, is that character that they added, that they totally invented, the warder who gets really depressed when his Aes Sedai dies when they're trying to take down Logain. I didn't like that much, and I really didn't like some of the changes they made to the final episode 8 of the season.
Yeah, I know episode 8 it was always going to be contentious because the end of the Eye of the World is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It was going to be strange, and to be honest, they would have had to dedicate a lot of resources to that episode if they really wanted to do it justice. Because there's so much stuff that happens to them in the Blight. Like, they get attacked by monsters, they meet a green man, they defeat two Forsaken, and then he goes to Tarwin's Gap and blows up a bunch of Trollocs. You know?
Yeah, and the Green Man is pretty important for what happens in the plot, but I could see how it could come across as really cheesy in the adaptation of the show too. Like, how are you going to do some giant green plant guy? Which I know you said because he was created. He was created during the previous age, which we know is kind of sci-fi because the timeline of the Wheel of Time is actually post-apocalyptic rather than fantasy, that the Green Man would look like some sort of robot or AI, but that would look kind of weird and cheesy on the show too, though.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't think they're gonna have the Green Man, because if you read the comic book, the Green Man looks so cheesy, looked like the Green Giant.
Yeah, Jolly Green Giant.
So yeah, I wasn't expecting the Green Man to kind of pop up, because I think they're trying to make the show a bit more mature and a bit more like darker in tone.
Yeah,
And
and I don't mind that. There's a little bit of some kind of cheesy, especially cheesy bickering between the 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 five characters from the two rivers, especially in the earlier books.
Yeah, they definitely do bicker in the earlier books. So when I did see them having their little arguments on screen, it didn't bother me too much. Because even though you're like, you stupid teenagers, get over yourselves. I was thinking that in the book too, when they were having their conflict. So it's like, yeah, they're doing it here. I know it bothers me because they're teenagers and they're doing their teenage thing. But yeah, it's kind of par for the course for the book and the show.
But
I
I'm
guess
saying
the
that I
other
like
thing is
that
like the love
they.
triangle is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's another thing they added that I really didn't like. They're adding this weird love triangle with Perrin, Egwene, and Rand, where they just totally added this thing where Perrin is attracted to Egwene. That whole thing just really pissed me off. Like, why are you adding all this completely invented drama? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird, but I think they've pretty much gotten over that. I don't think that love triangle is going to be a thing ever again.
I hope so.
Throughout any of the seasons coming up, because you have to leave room for Fael, you know.
Yeah, what book? In what book does Perrin meet Fael? Because I know they vary.
Literally
they
in the
seem to
next
vary.
book. The next book is when he meets
in book
her.
2.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I
During
seem
the
to
Great
remember
Hunt.
they kind of very quickly end up getting married, don't they?
Yeah, they end up getting married in book 4. So they meet in book 2. Is it book 2? I might be mistaken. It might be book 3.
I'm gonna look that up just to confirm.
I think it is. I think it is book 2. No, I think it is book 3 because Moraine was with them.
Okay. When does she have that fake out death? What book is that in?
Fake out death?
Yeah, when they think Moraine gets killed? Oh yeah, it is book 2 because it must have been in the Great Hunt, because there's an excerpt from a Wheel of Time fandom page here that says, while adventuring in Remen, Fael chooses to join the party of Perrin Ibarra in search of the Horn. So yeah, that must have been book 2.
No, I got it. Was it book 2?
Well, if she's going in search of the Horn, that would have to be book 2, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, book 2 is literally the hunt for the Horn.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at her wiki page, and they're saying her first appearance is The Dragon Reborn, chapter 33.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize she was in The Dragon Reborn. Okay.
So that would be book 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see.
Oh, I just confused Dragon Reborn with Eye of the World. Yeah, I forgot Dragon Reborn is book 3. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because in book 3, yeah, it is because they're looking for Rand, so they're on Rand's trail. So Moraine, Lan, and Perrin stop out of town, and that's when she's kind of in a common room at the inn.
Okay.
So yeah, they get married pretty quickly. By the end of this book, they're like, because I remember at the end of this book is when she gets like trapped in the dream world, and then the next book she follows him to his hometown, which is where they get married.
So do you think we're gonna see Fael in season 2 of the show then?
Well, I think season 2 is going to be a combination of book 2 and 3.
Okay, so yeah, almost definitely then.
It may or may not happen. That's what I'm saying. If it's not this season, it'll be the next.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it could be season 3 if it's if we get into the timeline of book 3 in the latter half of season 2 of the show.
Right.
Okay. All right.
When on Star Trek, was it Voyager? One of those. I despise Star Trek. And Tulak, I think his name was. And they said, oh, there's an article that said we finally have a black Vulcan.
Yeah, that's his
and
name.
My autism just hit to a 10, because the idea that on this planet Vulcan, I didn't know where it's supposed to be, that the races would evolve identically to the races on Earth is so demented. It's like saying, oh, we're finally going to see a black polar bear or a black lion. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, a species will evolve differently depending on conditions.
Yeah.
And the premise that they're going to evolve.
I was going to ask you about that because you know a lot more about Star Trek than me.
Yeah. Well, freaking Vulcans and Romulans, it's not. They look almost exactly like humans, except they got pointy ears and weird eyebrows.
Right.
So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary that they would evolve similarly on their own planet.
Right. Okay.
So if there's like equatorial Vulcans, you would expect them to have darker skin than than Vulcans that live near the pole.
because that's why some people have darker skin, because they're closer to the equator and they get more sunlight, so it's a genetic adaptation to make them more resistant to sunlight. So that could happen on any planet.
Right. So I just think this argument is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But he says he hates Star Trek, so he doesn't know. He's kind of talking out of his ass at this point.
Right. Okay.
It's like there's going to be necessarily an Africa on Vulcan that's going to lead to these kind of physiological conditions is so nonsensical. And then the person who was playing
it is sensical, like we were just saying, because that's not how skin color works. I mean, if you have humanoid species that are really similar to humans in appearance, like you were saying, it's totally feasible that some could have that genetic adaptation where their skin gets darker because they get more sunlight, and some would be
like even fucking animals, non-humans follow this. You go north and a lot of animals that live in these northern regions have white fur.
Yeah, like polar bears, like they mentioned, like polar bears.
And there's basically no animals with white fur in equatorial regions.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, that's like that's why I found this so interesting. Like, they both care way too much about race.
The character said, well, some racists have a problem with it. And they're like, oh, look, we have white supremacist Star Trek fans. And it's like, first of all, there's nothing surprising that a white supremacist like Star Trek. Let's leave that aside. But the idea that the only person who would be opposed to having like identical biodiversity on another planet would be a white supremacist is also insane. And I'm still triggered about it.
Yeah. And nerds like things to make sense.
Yes.
Like that's the problem. They've got all of these like, you know, LA creative types that are like, ooh, this will be cheeky and fun. And then the nerds watching are losing it.
Except also most nerds don't care about the racial differences anywhere near as much as you guys do.
Yeah, pretty much.
Autism, of course. But yeah, even if with like the Middle Earth stuff, they want to have all these girl bosses in it, right? And I'm sorry, but fantasy is based in, you know, medieval era where women were raped and subjugated.
Okay,
and
so
that
this
just
is
happens
dumb.
to be the time,
This
and
is
it's
straight up
analogous to
stupid.
that time in a lot of
Yeah, and also
how many
like
fantasy series have you read that have nothing to do with medieval? Like the most popular fantasy series in the world does not take place in medieval times. Harry Potter just takes place modern day. Like,
yeah,
what the
that's
fuck is she
contemporary.
talking about?
And we were just talking about how Wheel of Time is post-apocalyptic future world. Actually, it's not medieval times. And the Age of Madness, the Joe Abercrombie's second trilogy, is in during the Industrial Revolution. And there's the Era 2 of Mistborn is fantasy western. The Dark Tower series, Stephen King, is fantasy western, and a lot of it takes place in the contemporary world. Dresden Files is contemporary fantasy. There are a lot of different ones. I mean, it is standard for them to be taking place in medieval times, but it's not It's not like it has to be that way.
And I've read a lot of fantasy, and most of the fantasy that I've read doesn't have rape in it.
That's true, actually. Only grimdark fantasy tends to, like Game of Thrones. I mean, I don't even remember whether there's actually rape in First Law, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think there is in First Law.
Yeah, but I mean, it still tends to only happen in grimdark fantasy, right? Because that's a grimdark thing to happen.
Well, grimdark and very good kind.
Yeah. It's hard to classify whether he's grimdark or not. Definitely not as much as someone's like George R.R. Martin or Joe Abercrombie, but it's hard to say that he's full on grimdark.
No, I wouldn't say that because I don't consider his character. Well, I think Kalen has a grayish morality, but Richard doesn't. He's pretty much solid in the way he operates.
Yeah, he's a really boring one-dimensional character, like even more one-dimensional than Aragorn in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, because I think Kalen's more pragmatic, and he is not as pragmatic. I don't even think he's very pragmatic at all.
Yeah, he's kind of just too emotional and attached to honor and his principles to a fault.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, this saying that all fantasy is like, oh, medieval and has rapey women or women that get raped all the time. This is that's not particularly true.
She hasn't read widely enough in fantasy. Not at all.
Yeah. Like even the Wheel of Time, I don't think has any rape in it.
No. Well, and again, it's not grimdark either, right? And it's one of the most popular series of all time. And of course, in Lord of the Rings, there isn't any rape either. Obviously.
And to see where it's not based on this kind of medieval era, fine, you do that. But that's not really Lord of the Rings.
But didn't they have that girl who was like the elf or whatever, the blonde girl?
Yeah, Galadriel is
okay, but also like she's saying that because it's being all like supposedly woke and stuff means not taking place. There's a connection between that and it taking place in the medieval era. And I mean, I guess you could say there wouldn't be as much wokeness, but it's not as if in the medieval era there weren't black people or something like that.
All right. It's really weird arguments.
Yeah, like I don't see how these things are in any way connected.
A girl boss in this, and they do have outliers. I don't have a lot of faith that it's gonna
No,
be
but I
done
mean,
well.
they have
Maybe
that.
it will be done well. I don't know.
So anyway, I mean, are they going to say that the elves are all gay because they're like all girly? Like,
Well, they've got black elves now, and they haven't even put like long locks
Oh,
of hair
no.
and everything on them. And I'm like, where did this random black elf with short hair come from? And how does this add up with the history of?
Oh yeah, you mentioned that elf in the teaser trailer earlier. The black elf with short hair.
Yeah.
Again, I don't see how that's such a big deal. I mean, a black elf with short hair looks obviously completely the opposite of Legolas, but I
We
mean,
have to see why, if there's any
I mean,
significance to that.
it still could be, like we were talking about before, it still could be considered canon that there is a black elf in the same way that it still could be considered canon that there's a black dwarf.
Right. We just gotta see what the significance of that is.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are definitely ways I've seen in movies and TV shows where it's just obviously super fucking wokeified, and that's why they added the diversity. But then there are other times when they just obviously have casted the characters in that role because they're good in that role. And there are plenty of movies with female protagonists, for example, that are just totally normal movies, except the hero is a woman instead of a man, like the Underworld movies with Kate Beckinsale and the Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich. They're just female characters, but they're not like fucking super woke women somehow, and there's wokeness all over the movies just because they're female protagonists. And in the same way as there being black characters, of course, like Blade, for example, fucking awesome black superhero. It's not a woke movie by any sense of the word.
Yeah. I think they call it woke whenever a character gets turned black. Like Nick Fury. I don't remember anyone saying anything about Nick Fury. That Marvel was woke for making Nick Fury black. And I don't
Was
remember
he
them saying,
white in the comics?
Yeah, he's been white for a long ass time.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know.
And then Heimdall's not black, and he's black in Thor movies.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. Who's Heimdall again?
Heimdall is the one who watches the Rainbow Road, the Bifrost. He's
right.
He's played by what's his name?
Idris Elba.
Yeah, he's played by Idris Elba.
Oh,
like he's mentioned in Norse mythology.
Yeah,
he gets brief mentions here and there, but he's just a guardian.
That's a good point too, because I was actually just thinking about how they cast Idris Elba as the gunslinger in the Dark Tower movie, that one I talked with you and Parker about with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, that I thought was, and a lot of people thought was really bad because they tried to make it into a YA movie that was mainly about that kid Jake instead of about the gunslinger itself. And how we know, because you and Parker and I recently read book 2 of the Dark Tower series, that there's this whole dynamic where the white gunslinger there's a dynamic between him and the black handicapped woman in a wheelchair who he and Eddie end up going toward the Dark Tower with in his dimension, where she's just constantly accusing him and Eddie of being racist honkies and shit like that. Yeah. Obviously, that whole dynamic wouldn't work if the gunslinger is black, because the whole dynamic is about racism, which is why, like, that's an instance in which, at least if you want to make a sequel, especially, it doesn't make sense to have changed the race of that character, even though that
you made the woman like a racist white supremacist, like as an
yeah, you could do the
ego.
opposite, I guess. Yeah, you could do that, I suppose. But
that would be funny.
And I was gonna say too, I mean, if they don't end up doing a sequel, which since it had such a bad reception, maybe they won't do it anyway. If it's just a standalone movie, and maybe they'll try it again at some point, then as a standalone movie, I think Idris Elba does actually a good job of playing the gunslinger. But like I was telling you and Parker, I watched that movie before I read the book, so I didn't know that the gunslinger was supposed to be white. So even after I read the book, it didn't really make a difference to me. But then obviously, like we were talking about in the second book, that's why I kept having to remind myself that the gunslinger is white when I was reading book 2 of Dark Tower, because I was picturing Idris Elba the whole. Yeah.
That's funny. Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense. She's calling Idris Elba a honky.
Yeah,
Honk
exactly.
mofo.
You honky mofo. Yeah.
Middle Earth. I don't know. We'll find
You know
out,
what?
I guess.
If we want to play this game, Wizards of the Coast, we can play it, because within Dungeons and Dragons, there is a race called the Dark Elves, and they're all evil, and they live underground. But if you're gonna play it, that's the race you want to get rid of. But they had a series of best-selling New York Times
Hey,
best-selling.
obviously, he's just being controversial there.
Yeah, and he's a little out of the loop because they're no longer all evil now.
Oh yeah, you
But he
mentioned
was
that
right,
before,
though.
didn't
In
you?
the past,
Yeah.
they were like a race of evil beings.
But that's kind of like a standard fantasy thing, in that you know, the light side or the white are good guys, or the dark side or the black are bad guys, but it has nothing to do with skin color. It has to do with morality, basically.
Well, the Dark Elves were actually dark skinned.
Oh, they were? Oh, okay.
But yeah, but they looked nothing like black people. They were just basically elves. Like they looked identical, except their skin was dark.
Okay.
You know, it's not like, oh, they also have wide noses and kinky hair and big lips. Is like, no, they didn't look like black people. They just looked like very dark skinned elves.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Like, obviously, we're seeing that they're caring way too much about the skin color of characters in fictional realms.
Right. Yeah, it's weird they care
Best-selling
so
novel.
much about this topic. It's
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, it really is.
By R.A. Salvatore about them, about the black elf who's actually a good guy.
Oh, there you go.
Jordan, whatever his name was. That is his name. I'm not.
Oh, Daniel Green has
But
talked
if
about
you
him.
really want to, there actually is a race that ports much better this anyway. But it's oh god, okay. I love that.
Okay, we'll just stop there. But
You're
yeah.
welcome.
But yeah, they just care way too much about the race of fictional characters.
Yeah, it's too early to tell what type of impact a racial, dark-skinned, non-white elf is going to have on the show.
Yeah, I
And
just
this
really
is
hope.
one fucking character. It's like,
Yeah.
wow.
I just
It's not
really
like
hope
they
it works
cast
out
the
well.
entire elven race is like short-haired black people.
Yeah, that's a good point. It depends on whether there's some individual variation between the different elves and dwarves, and they're doing it that way this time. That like, there would be nothing wrong with doing that. If they just make everyone black for some reason, that would make less sense. It's like that movie, oh, I forget what it's called. That one I was telling you about before. That one, I think it's based on a comic book, but Charlize Theron plays the leader of these immortal assassins who come back to life after they get killed. But they had they had this woman who was a soldier in Iraq or Afghanistan, and she was somehow, for some reason, in an entire platoon of black female soldiers, and they were palling around with 2 or 3 other entirely black female platoons of soldiers. And that just made me think, okay, there almost certainly are black female soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I think women in particular are still the minority of people who are soldiers in general. So that really doesn't make sense. And then they also added these two gay characters, and I just bailed on the movie when they got kidnapped by the bad guys, and they just had to, for some reason, give this whole soapbox speech to this one guy had to give this whole soapbox speech to the gang of bad guys who had them kidnapped in the back of a truck about how much he loves his boyfriend. Like,
Yeah, is it called the Old Guard?
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. I couldn't even make it through that movie. That was like so terrible. And it's too bad because the concept itself is really cool. One of immortal warriors who come back to life after they die. That concept itself is really cool, but I just thought the movie was executed really poorly.
That's too bad. And I think it's based off of the comic book.
Yeah. You haven't read any of the comics, have you?
No, I'm just looking at a kind of synopsis of this, and it's like a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
What made you want to watch it?
Well, like I was saying, just because the concept of immortal warriors who come back to life after they die, I thought that was really cool.
Okay. I wonder, yeah, that makes it weird if it's not explicitly like a blaxploitation movie, that they'd have a weird regiment of black soldiers. It's like,
yeah. Yeah.
Why are they being segregated or something? What's going on here?
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. But yeah, let's get into more of the comparisons between what it looks like and what we know so far about Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and the way the Wheel of Time adaptation worked out. I would be willing to bet, I guess, that it's probably going to be similar to, and I wouldn't even mind if it's no better than this. It's similar to the way that it worked out with the Wheel of Time, in that there were some changes that I liked and made sense, and then others that I didn't like and didn't make sense. So hopefully that'll end up being the case, and it won't be terrible, or maybe it'll even be awesome. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, they're gonna have a lot of creative leeway, because the story is basically a backbone of a story.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be able to have a lot of creative license to create a story. But I think that's the difference between Wheel of Time and this. Wheel of Time has a pretty solid blueprint on what they're supposed to do. And since it's so solid, any deviation from that blueprint, it's really jarring to fans. And when you're looking at this Rings of Power, the blueprint is like barely a backbone. Like, I can't remember in the Silmarillion reading any specific plots about Isildur, and he seems to be a major character in this adaptation.
Yeah, I just remember him being maybe mentioned offhand a few times in what I remember from the last time I read the Silmarillion, but yeah, I don't remember there being much detail about him as a character either.
Yeah, so in this second age, and from what I've also read, like the time between Isildur's, when he was alive, and when the rings were created, were 2,000 years. So it's been a while between.
Oh, okay.
So if they do show something about the rings being created, it's probably going to be some flashback or something, because Celebrimbor is still alive at this period of time. So there's maybe, and he's in this series, so it's possible that we might get some flashbacks from that character when he was thinking about making them.
That would be really cool if they do something like that, like you were mentioning earlier, how they could have flashbacks of way earlier and then jump back and forth in time between that and Isildur's life.
Mm-hmm. So my guess it's going to be, right before the war, when they were fighting Sauron. Basically, the opening prologue in the Lord of the Rings, where they're fighting that big battle against Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that that's what the series is leading up to. But
yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, so I always loved that scene in the beginning of it looks so epic, and I was like, man, I wonder what led up to that. And I think kind of that's what we're gonna see here. What leads up to that?
Yeah,
That's
be
what
really cool.
That's my opinion. I don't know what exactly they're gonna do here, but based off of the evidence I've seen in the casting, that's what I think is gonna happen.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I really don't know where it's going to go. It could go in so many different directions, but I mean, based on what we've seen and what seems likely based on what we've been talking about, I think it would be really cool if out of the possibilities that we've been discussing, that something happens with the jumping back and forth in time, like you were just talking about, and maybe it ends with the prologue in Fellowship of the Ring, the movie, and it could start and we could get into the corruption of Sauron and the fall of Numenor, the making of the rings. We know we're gonna see Elrond and Galadriel. Maybe we could even see Gandalf too, because he's in the Second Age, of course, as well. And I mean, it would be really cool to see some stuff with the Balrogs, because there were way more Balrogs around at this time, and way more dragons too. There's so many different directions they could go with it.
Yeah, so I think they're going to have a lot of leeway, and that makes me excited because I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah,
I don't know what the story that they're going to tell. I guess the only thing I know is the conclusion, but I have no idea what happens between when Isildur is a kid to that point, because they don't really go into great detail in the Silmarillion about what happens between those two events.
Yeah, maybe and if that's the case, at this point at least, it's kind of similar to the way that the Wheel of Time show worked out, in that it really is strictly like it's adhering to the source of the spirit of the source material, in that it's it's conducting the storylines in ways that make sense with the way the world and the rules of it are supposed to work, but they're kind of combining characters and moving events around and doing things in a little bit of a different way, so you don't know where it's going to go, because it's kind of creating a new way of looking at the Wheel of Time stories in a different way, that a lot of the events that are going to happen, and the characters involved, but you don't know which events are going to happen, in what order, and with which characters, and whether they're going to be moved around or not, and things like that.
Yeah, it's because of the complexity and length of the Wheel of Time that we have this kind of condensation and change of the story that we may not be used to.
Yeah.
So I guess that's an exciting aspect. And then now that I think about like reading the Harry Potter books and then watching the movies, I was like, okay, there was nothing unexpected that happened, because they are all adhere pretty close to the book. So I was like, okay, I kind of know exactly what's happening, and I know the exact plot and the pacing, and I am not surprised by any of it at all.
Right. Yeah. It's good. I like it about Wheel of Time on your channel, but yeah, I mean, I like both different approaches to adaptations for different reasons. For the one type is the like you were talking about, like the Harry Potter movies or like the Lord of the Rings movies, they adhered really strictly to the source material for the most part. I really like those types of adaptations, but I also totally respect the adaptations that are going in different directions in a lot of ways. Like the Wheel of Time adaptation is really not strictly adhering to the source material in the same way that the Lord of the Rings movies are. But that's also interesting because we have way less of an idea what's going to happen, and we know that the way that's executed determines whether the changes are going to turn out to be better or worse than books, with something like episode 4 versus episode 8 of the first season of the show, right?
Yeah, and some people are treating like this Wheel of Time adaptation like it's the same as like the Mario Brothers movie. They're like, it's like, okay, like the Mario Brothers movie is like, what the fuck did I just watch? Even though I kind of liked the Mario Brothers movie because it was so weird and different from what you would think Mario Brothers is.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's kind of like, it's like, oh, this isn't Wheel of Time at all. Wine. Like, well, the basic skeleton is there. But yeah, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Oh, this is so woke. I can't stand it. This is so woke. I'm not gonna watch it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's
I see that in
stupid.
comment sections everywhere. Oh, they hired a black person. It's woke.
Oh, that's so
I can't
stupid.
watch this.
Yeah, like we talked about that in comparison to the Rings of Power trailer too, right? Like, well, especially in Wheel of Time, we talked about this before, about how it would make even more sense for there to be more racial diversity between people, especially in somewhere like the Two Rivers, because this is actually a future post-apocalyptic world rather than a medieval world. So there's even more of a reason for there to be more racial diversity between people than there is in Tolkien's world in Middle Earth.
Right, because before the breaking had only been 3,000 years.
Okay.
So, it's not like black people are going to be gone.
Yeah, of course.
3,000 years is going to eliminate black people from society.
And with Min and plenty of other characters, we know obviously Asian people aren't going to be gone either.
But I have a suspicion that the primarily like dark race will be black.
Okay.
Because there is a race of people in the Wheel of Time that exclusively have been described as black.
Oh, is there?
That was like, yeah, the Athan Mier, the sea people.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, they're black. That was described as being black. I wonder if the showrunner's going to adhere to that or not.
Did you hear that Rafe quit being the showrunner for the show?
That was just a rumor, and
oh, it was?
It's not he didn't quit. It's just that he's also going to be some type of consultant for a God of War show.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, because
he's not going to be the showrunner. He's just like he's involved with the project, but he's not the showrunner.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's a relief, actually, because, I mean, like we were talking about, the adaptation could definitely be better, but if you hand it off to someone else now, it could be better or it could be worse, and it would be harder for it to be better because we've already set the tone with the way that Rafe has done it.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine if the Game of Thrones show, like, they got totally different showrunners.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Well, it's just like
that
the
would be
difference
like
between the Snyder cut and the regular cut.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, the theatrical and the Snyder cut of Justice League. Yeah, 2 different tones versus one consistent one.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be weird. I don't think ever changing a showrunner mid-show, especially if it's a show based off of fiction, is a good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think he's doing okay. It's not horrible, but it's not super amazing.
Yeah.
That said, I was going to say something I completely forgot.
About Rafe or the showrunner or...
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you because you said you had been getting further along in Game of Thrones because you had mentioned Arya kills the Night King.
Yeah, Arya killed the Night King. Yeah, I'm halfway through season 8 now. So I just watched yesterday. I just watched the episode. I think it was episode 4, where they go to Daenerys and Jon Snow's armies. They both go to attack King's Landing, and the bells of peace and surrender toll, which Tyrion wanted to happen to. He wanted to get Daenerys to agree to stop the attack and mass genocide of all of the people in the city if the bells went off, but Daenerys decided to just do a mass genocide on everyone and destroy everything anyway.
Right, so you're almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're almost finished.
So far, I actually really like it. I mean, apparently people say that it gets worse later on in the season, but so far I really like the first 4 episodes of season 8.
Well, I felt that season 8 in general was super rushed. Like it seemed like doesn't it seem like super condensed? Like to me, in my opinion.
Well, the episodes are
White
really long
Walkers.
though. The episodes are like movies. They're longer than usual even. A lot of them are an hour and 20 minutes long. They're almost an hour and a half long movie.
Yeah, however, I think they should have ended a season on the White Walker battle.
They could have done that. They did do a lot of stuff. They did the White Walker battle, and then now they did the Battle of King's Landing, and then I mean, no spoilers, but I'm assuming with this whole situation where people know that Jon Snow is actually Aegon Targaryen and has a better claim to the throne than Daenerys does, that I assume that there's eventually going to be some sort of war between them for the throne as well, which is why there's still half of the season left.
Yeah, you'll have to see. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'll just say that I think they could have added an extra season because I felt like they should have, like the whole White Walker, that should have been a climax of a season, not kind of like this mid-season thing that happens.
I agree. That would have been cool if it was a longer, more protracted war with the White Walkers. I really like, for the most part, I like most of what happened in it, though. I think the way it was done was really cool for the most part.
Yeah, I think my favorite, I don't know, is this last season? Because the last season, the thing I really enjoyed was when they went to that area and they fought like the zombie dragon.
Yeah.
And they were like trying to survive on this little island.
Yeah,
in the
that
middle
was
of
so
like
cool.
A frozen lake. I thought that was a to me that was like the peak of the last couple seasons.
That was my favorite episode in that season, I bet. Yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah, the last 2 seasons, I thought that was the peak. That was like my favorite episode of the last 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they could have paid more deference to the story. I just felt like the last, like season 8 was just super rushed to me. It just felt rushed. Like the pacing wasn't there. Yeah, I think they could have made at least one extra season, and it would have been. I think they could have ended it right if they did that.
Maybe it would have ended up better that way. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the showrunners just wanted to quit. It's like, oh, we want to do other stuff and make a Star Wars movie, even though I think they got cut from that project or something.
Oh, okay. Did you hear? I just watched a Daniel Green video about this yesterday. That apparently this August, the Game of Thrones prequel show is going to be coming out, House of the Dragon, which, like, even the name House of the Dragon seems to me, oh, okay, it's House Targaryen, so it's going to be a prequel about the Targaryens. So it's going to
I
be about
believe
the
that.
Mad King and stuff, I bet.
Well, I think it's about.
Or maybe it could go
there's a
back
book.
farther.
Yeah, there's a book that Martin wrote that was basically before when the Targaryens lived in their own island or wherever they lived.
Oh, yeah.
They,
Was that Fire and
it's,
Blood, or was it the other one?
it's one of those. So it's one that before the Targaryens left to the to conquer the Seven Kingdoms.
Okay.
I believe that's what it's going to be about, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that could be interesting. I mean, again, I hope that's going to be good too. I'm surprised that we haven't heard that much about it, and it's just kind of suddenly going to be coming out in August, even before the Rings of Power.
Well, I'm not surprised because a lot of fans were pissed off about the last season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I know.
So it doesn't surprise me that there have been some people that have lost interest. It's not this big juggernaut that it used to be.
Yeah.
But
Daniel Green was saying that some fans of the books are so pissed off at George R.R. Martin at putting off finishing Winds of Winter to do other projects like this prequel show and writing other books and doing other stuff, that they're going to boycott watching House of the Dragon. And I bet people are going to.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I don't really like boycotting things generally. I'll almost certainly still watch the show. But I mean, it really is starting to annoy me more and more too that he's not writing Winds of Winter, even though I do get the point to just want to make as much money as possible. But you only have to write like 2 more books in your series, really, man. Like, the number 7 is really important, so I think it probably could be a 7-book series, or maybe it could.
Doesn't the guy have enough money? Doesn't he have enough?
Yeah, I think so, man. Like, look at Brandon Sanderson. I mean, I know he writes. He might be the most prolific author of all time. I mean, don't quote me on that. Maybe Isaac Asimov was more prolific, or L. Ron Hubbard, because he apparently was phenomenally prolific and wrote hundreds of books.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I still think about that joke skit video that Daniel Green did, where he has George R. R. Martin calling Brandon Sanderson calling George R. R. Martin and said, "Hey, guess what? I wrote 5 entire books in the last year and a half. What'd you do? Like 1 paragraph of Winds of Winter?"
I don't know why J.K. Rowling is on this prolific authors list. She didn't write that many books.
Really? I didn't even, I mean, I know she wrote a newer Harry Potter book that I haven't read, and she wrote those 2 little fake pamphlets that got made into one of which got made into the Fantastic Beasts movies.
Holy crap. Well, the most prolific author of all time is an author I've never heard of.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Corinne Tolado, and all she did was write romance novels.
Oh, okay.
And she wrote 4,000 of them.
Holy shit. Wow. I mean, if you're writing just formulaic shit, that could be really easy to do and not take much time.
They're saying Charles Hamilton. Nobody knows how many books he's written, but he wrote over 5,000 short stories.
Okay.
There's a Brazilian-born Japanese author, Ryoki Inoue, who published 1,075 fiction books using 13 pseudonyms.
Holy shit. Wow.
So on this list, none of these people I recognize.
Oh, wow.
Except Isaac Asimov, and he's like near the end.
Oh, wow. I had no idea how prolific some authors can get. I thought hundreds of books was impressive.
So Asimov wrote over 500 novels
That's a lot, man.
and hundreds of short stories.
Yeah.
The one right behind him is R.L. Stine. Of course. He's written like 450 of, R.L. Stine books.
The Goosebumps?
Well, just like Goosebumps and, adjacent types of books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
I
he
had
must
no
be
idea
pretty.
he had written that many of those.
Yeah, so or Asimov is still considered quite prolific,
Okay.
even though he didn't write 4,000 romance novels.
Holy shit, man. I mean, Isaac Asimov novels are probably way more difficult to write and take more time than writing some formulaic romance novel, if it is a formulaic one.
Mm. Yeah, because that Ryoki Inoue, he's been known to write an entire book in a day.
Holy shit. Wow.
Without any break.
Again, I wonder if they're actually good books. If they actually are good books and you can write a good book in a day, that's fucking impressive. If
I
it's
don't
just a
know.
shitty formulaic, I mean, even if it is just a shitty formulaic one, that's pretty fucking impressive to do in one day too.
Yeah, but he writes books in Japanese and Brazil and Portuguese.
Wow.
So he writes them in those two languages.
Okay.
But he's the only one that's acknowledged in the Guinness Book as the most prolific writer.
The Brazilian Japanese guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went on Amazon to see what he's written. There's, I guess, very few are worthy of being sold to the public.
Oh, really?
Let me see. Yeah, only like 2 books popped up.
Okay.
So maybe his other books aren't very good. I have no idea. But then
Okay.
again, he uses 13 pseudonyms, so I don't know what his other pseudonyms are.
Oh, yeah. Maybe.
He probably doesn't even use his real name.
Yeah,
For
that
his
wouldn't
book.
surprise me. A lot of authors write under pseudonyms, right?
Yeah, I'm looking because Robert Jordan never wrote with his real name.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he used other pseudonyms. He had published. Yeah, he has like 39 pseudonyms. They're saying. Yeah. Holy crap.
Oh, wow. I had no idea he had anywhere near that many. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of pseudonyms. Crazy.
What is his original name again?
He was born Jose Carlos Ryoki de Alpoiminoe.
Robert Jordan?
Oh, Robert Jordan. No, it's
That's who I meant.
oh no, I think it's James Rigney.
Oh, okay.
Is that it? James Rigney Jr. Let me see. But I have another series of his under a different name. It's like Fallon something.
Oh, okay.
James Oliver Rigney Jr.
So other than Warrior of the Altai, and I think maybe I had heard maybe some graphic novels or something like that, but it could be wrong about that. Other than that, in the Wheel of Time series, did Robert Jordan write anything else?
Did some Conan Barbarian books.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Remember I told you that Daniele Bolelli doesn't like those ones. He thinks they're way worse than the ones written by Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, he doesn't like the Robert Jordan ones because I know
Yeah.
some of the Robert Jordan books are basically like movie adaptations, like novelizations of the movies.
Oh, okay.
But some of them are original. So
Okay. I kind of want to read them actually.
Yeah, and then I have one of his books like sitting on a shelf, one of his Conan books. As they don't even sell like Kindle versions of his books. So you have to get
Oh,
these in like a paperback. And it's like super beat up because they're out of print. So
oh
these
wow.
aren't, yeah, these books aren't in print and they aren't offered on Kindle. So that makes it
Okay.
a little bit difficult to find them. He also wrote in another pen name. What was it? It was like Fallon, something Fallon.
Robert Jordan?
Yeah, he had another pen name, and actually found a trilogy under. I have a trilogy that he wrote under another pen name.
Oh, cool. What's it
That I
about?
haven't gotten to. I don't know. I haven't listened to it yet, but I know it's supposed to be like a period novel, like about the Civil War, I think.
That's interesting.
Um, Let me see if I can find that pen name. It's like something Fallon or Fallon something.
Okay.
Let me see. Robert Jordan. Let me see if I write it here. If I can. Fallon.
Civil War.
Yeah, it's called the Fallon Blood, and his it's called the Fallon Blood Fallon series. And his
Okay.
pen name when he wrote this series was Regan O'Neill or Reagan
Oh, okay.
O'Neill.
Okay.
So he wrote this, and it's about let me see. It's the
Civil War
uh,
era, you said?
yeah, it says 1760, so actually it's even earlier than that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like
Before
it's
the
the
US was even a country.
yeah, so it's pre War of Independence.
Right. Okay. That could be interesting.
Um, but it looks like there's 3 books. One of them takes place in Texas. So I guess it's maybe further along than this first book.
Yeah, I don't know which colonies existed that kept their names as states before America was a country, because I know there were some.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's his other Regan O'Neill is his other pen name.
Okay. Yeah, I would read that. That's interesting.
But this
Hmm.
is a book that's published by Tor Books, so
Oh yeah,
interesting.
the main one of the main fantasy publishers, of course.
Mhm. Oh man. So when is this Rings of Power supposed to come out?
September, remember? So the House of the Dragon will come out in August, then Rings of Power in September, then season 2 of Wheel of Time is going to come out in November, right?
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Right next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of them. I really hope that all of them are going to be good. Since we've already seen season 1 of Wheel of Time, I'm more hopeful for that, but hopefully both of the other shows turn out well too. I guess the one, I would say the one out of those 3 that I want to work out the most for me would be the Rings of Power, because I like it more than like the most out of those 3 different fantasy series. But I bet you and Tristram would continue to like Wheel of Time to work out more, probably, right? Because that's both of your favorite fantasy series, I think. I mean, at least it's yours. Actually, I'm not sure whether that's Tristram's too, or maybe it's Stormlight Archive or something by Brandon Sanderson.
Well, Little Time is the one that got me like heavily into fantasy. But I'd say there's a lot in it. It's super freaking huge.
Definitely.
And I can definitely say when Sanderson took over, there are definitely a lot of improvements made in it. But yeah, I probably say that this is basically one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's definitely good. And because there's so much to it and it's so phenomenally complex in such a big world, as we've talked about many times when we talk about the books, when you reread them, and probably each time you reread them, you notice more stuff that you missed the last time you read them before.
Yeah, one thing I did notice is that there's little to no exposition in these books. So in order to
That's why
out
they can be hard to figure out. Yeah, hard to follow sometimes. Like, well, wait, who are these 18 characters? I know those 2 or 3 out of those other 18, but who are those 18?
Yeah, so there's a lack of exposition, and he tries to sprinkle clues in the world so that you can figure out what's going on. So he's not really explicit about making sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on at every exact moment. It's almost like he writes to make sure that, hey, are you paying attention to this?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah,
if
that's
not,
why
well.
things like Wheel of Time spoilers and discussions with you guys and all kinds of stuff like that is really helpful and is so phenomenally revealing about so much of the stuff that's going on that you don't realize.
Yeah, because it's funny. Like I know in some of the earlier books, he did some reiterations of like he'd try to do like audience refreshers about particular characters. But at this point, he just doesn't do it anymore. It's like you
Yeah.
just kind of have to freaking remember
I
who this
actually
person
like
is.
that. I actually like that that Jim Butcher does that in his Dresden Files books. Because I have trouble remembering what happened in previous books often anyway.
Oh yeah, he reiterates a lot. Yeah, Jim Butcher, he reiterates a lot. So you rarely get lost in his books.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of any characters that like, oh, I don't know who this is. It's like no, he makes sure you know who's who.
And that's really awesome because they get more and more complex as they go along too, and that makes it really easy to follow when they go so complex.
Yeah, because I know there's like a character in book 2 or 3 that you don't see until like the last book that just came out. I was like, he goes to this vampire party and he meets like a couple powerful individuals. And one of them is a dragon, and this guy does not show up until like the last book that he's written. There's going to be more books.
That. Yeah.
But he hadn't been mentioned at all until this later book. And I remember I had you read the short stories, and there was a lot of relevance to those stories till this last book. Because there are a lot of tie-ins. Because if you hadn't read any of the short stories, you'll be like, "What? Who's this Bigfoot guy coming here all of a sudden?"
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Bigfoot.
and he wrote like 3 different short stories about this Bigfoot type dude.
And the ones from wait, are there multiple? Yeah, I think there were multiple, but there was at least one from the perspective of his dog, right?
Oh yeah. That was like there was a story that had the same event being played out by 3 different perspectives. So one was a perspective of him, his dog, and his daughter.
Right. Yeah. That was one of many that was really cool in the collection of short story. I also really like the one from Thomas's perspective, where he was fighting a lot of the vampires of the Black Court.
Oh yeah, that was really good too. There's the thing I like about his short stories is that they often take perspectives of different characters. And if you remember, like the entire Dresden Files is all Dresden's perspective. It's a first-person story, so it's really refreshing seeing these alternate perspectives in these short stories where we get to be inside the heads of the other characters that he's created.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like the series stays that way, which is the way that the Wheel of Time books start out at. Well, actually, I guess maybe it's even just the first one that's entirely, or at least almost entirely, from Rand's perspective, and then I think it's in book 2 where it ventures off and goes into so many different perspectives of characters, I think, right?
Yeah, the Wheel of Time, the very first book, Eye of the World, doesn't have that many POV chapters of different characters because it's mostly Rand, and the only time where it splits off is when the group gets split up.
Yeah.
So you're kind of forced to have perspectives of other characters.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
But
I mean, and both different things are good for different reasons too. Like, I guess I prefer the recaps and being more clear about things in Dresden Files, but I also love trying to figure out more and more stuff and like solve the puzzle of everything that's going on in the Wheel of Time for sure too.
Yeah, because I'm looking at breakdown of the POVs right now of the first book, and 79% of the book is from Rand's point of view.
Okay.
We get 12% from parents. We get 3% from Nynaeve, 3% from Egwene, and the next would be like 0.5% from Luz Theron, which will be in the prologue.
Right.
And 0.4% from chapter 53, which I think is the last chapter.
Okay.
Of Moraine. So it's mostly Rand in the first book that you're viewing the story from. I don't know, for the show they really had to change that up in order to
they started that off way earlier in the show, right? In season 1 they already started venturing off into a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, every of the main characters. So you had Egwene have her own POVs, Nynaeve had her own POVs, Matt, Aaron, like all in the first episode. They all had their own points of view. And I'm glad that they played it like that, because it created mystery for those people who aren't familiar of this series. Because if everything was like from Rand's perspective, it would have been no mystery who the Dragon Reborn was.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I understand complaints about that aspect, but I thought it was cool that they added that mystery of who it was. Like I was saying at the time before we knew how it was going to turn out, I just hope that they still have Rand as being the Dragon Reborn and they don't change it to it being all of them, which they didn't. So I'm really happy that they did it that way.
Yeah, I don't know how they would have done it otherwise, because they would have fundamentally changed like the rest of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Dragon Reborn. I wasn't worried about that.
You're breaking up a lot there.
So. Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, now you're back to normal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had no doubts that Rand wasn't going to be the dragon. I was like, yeah, Rand's going to be it. I know some people are still afraid.
And again, the whole thing where they added that Perrin had a wife who got killed in episode 1, that's a change that was just kind of dumb, but it didn't ruin the whole way that the story works out, because he could still definitely end up with Fael.
Yeah, I guess we just got to see what happens. I know it creates a lot of tension from the fans, because I know a lot of people were upset when Moraine and Spawn kissed. They're like, oh, no, she's not going to get with Tom. I was like, how do you know she's not going to get with Tom?
Yeah.
You don't know that. Oh no,
Yeah.
Swan's not going to get with Garrett's friend. I was like, how do you know that? That's because they
Yeah.
kissed here?
Yeah, people can be bisexual. It is possible.
Yeah, and then you have, and we already know that in the past they were fellow friends, so, and then they developed like hetero relationships later.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the series is adverse to like non-standard romantic relationships.
Yeah, pillow friends, which they're making things more explicit that were more subtle. Like Robert Jordan was really subtle about the sexual stuff, of course, and that's something that they're, making more adult and less kind of borderline YA in the show, which I also think is good.
Yeah, yeah. So there's Rings of Power. Like I'm excited. I like Tolkien's world. And I'll be really interested to see what they do. Just based off of like the visuals I saw, I thought it was pretty decent.
Yeah, it looks pretty
but
cool.
But like I said, I'd have no idea what to expect story-wise. And I think that's the exciting part about it, is that I don't have any like super high expectations to follow some particular script because I really don't know what they're going to do, and what they're going to do hasn't been completely mapped out to the T.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
I'm
spent
excited.
a crap ton of money on it, so we'll see.
Oh yeah, they did. They had the biggest budget, right? Something like 100 ever of any show. Something like $100 million for the first season, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge budget. So
yeah,
it's the biggest budget ever for a season of television.
Yeah, that's crazy. I hope that they use those funds well. We know that Wheel of Time had a super high budget too, but they still had to skimp on some stuff.
Yeah, it was a higher budget than Game of Thrones, but yeah, even then they still had to skimp. And some of it had to do with COVID too, so.
Yeah, of course. Well, it seems like hopefully at least they didn't have to. Well, I guess they probably didn't have to deal with that as much on Rings of Power, at least in the way that changing the situation, because they probably had to do the whole thing in that situation. But I'm just assuming, though, I don't actually know that. Maybe they were affected in a similar way.
It's certainly possible that they were, because my guess is they probably had to film at least within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So who knows if that affected them significantly or not. I'm guessing it's going to be less, since the series is coming out much later than Wheel of Time did, even though Wheel of Time did have to take a hiatus because of the pandemic. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see.
Yeah. I guess that's why I'm making that assumption, because it's coming out so much later than Wheel of Time.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm thinking it's going to be pretty decent. I don't think there's going to be anything that's too woke that's going to detract me from watching it.
Yeah, I think so.
If two female elves kiss each other, I'm not going to give a shit, really.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit during Game of Thrones, because there's no explicit like gay scenes in the Game of Thrones books, but they sure as hell threw those into the show.
Yeah, they did. But they did that for like, I don't know if that was really like a woke thing or just a sex thing.
I don't even really care. They probably just wanted to create like drama and create gossip and discussion.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, I hope it works out well. Yeah. All right.
I don't think there's probably going to be extremely sexless.
Oh yeah, the Rings of Power for sure. Tolkien he was way more old fashioned. This is obviously Tolkien's world is way more just traditional classic fantasy, which because he basically essentially invented the fantasy genre.
Yeah, there's not going to be any banging.
But you know, Tolkien that's part of why I love Tolkien too, because he has all the standard fantasy tropes, and he did them the best, and which is why so many have copied him since then. And Wheel of Time is like starts off Tolkien and then goes off in a whole bunch of totally different directions.
Yeah, if it happens that Amazon shows like some elves banging, I wouldn't be mad. I would laugh at that.
I would too.
It would seem super out of place, and I'd probably think it was funny. But I think some people would be really pissed off about it.
Yeah, I bet I would also just find it funny. Oh, dude, by the way, did you see? It was recommended to me. Like, I stumbled upon it on YouTube and I posted it everywhere because it was hilarious. Someone did like a song remix of Will Smith slapping Chris Rock and made it into like a rap song.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I must have missed that.
Yeah, if you just search I think if you search Will Smith Chris Rock song remix, I bet it'll pop up. I bet there are probably a lot of people who've done that.
Yeah, it's funny how that event has unfolded. Like, so much stuff has happened.
So much hilarious stuff has happened as a result of it. People have hilarious, weird, nonsensical political takes, and then people have made all sorts of hilarious memes and even made art out of it, like making a song out of it.
Yeah, I was watching. Do you know Andrew Schultz, the comedian?
He's I've heard of him, but I don't think I've seen any of his comedy or anything like that.
Oh man, he completely roasted Will Smith. That's freaking brutal.
Okay.
So brutal.
Nice.
But yeah, he roasted him. Like, if compared to what, oh man, he said some really brutal jokes about Will Smith.
Okay.
This is super brutal.
I can check that out.
Yeah, I found it because I found a compilation of comedians talking about that incident, and basically it's just a bunch of comedians roasting Will Smith and Jada Pinkett. Okay. And like, the roast of his was so bad it compelled me to listen to that entire episode to hear what they're gonna say.
Nice.
Well, it was pretty funny. There's a lot of roasting. Apparently, half of people are on Will's side and half of the people are on Chris's side.
Yeah, which is fucking crazy. Like, holy shit. That's so... Yeah. It's so dumb that...
slap somebody.
Yeah.
You'll go to a comedy show in the front row, get offended and slap the performer. That's just dumb.
Yeah, it's really stupid.
So he resigned from the academy, which really doesn't mean a whole lot.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the only thing is he can't vote for Academy Award winners. Does not exclude him from being a future Academy Award winner.
Yeah, I bet he's definitely gonna go back there.
He finally apologized to Chris Rock. At Chris Rock's first comedy show after this incident, which sold out.
Of course it did.
The tickets were like in the thousands of dollars.
Holy shit.
Like, his only remark about it is that he said he was still processing it and didn't have like a whole lot to say about it at that time.
Okay.
And then there was some video that surfaced of Chris Rock talking to Howard Stern about how he had been suffered extreme bullying as a child because he went to an all-white school and he would always get like beat up all the time. And how he coped with getting his ass kicked every day was cracking jokes and being funny.
Yeah, that's what he was doing with Will Smith, and then Will Smith basically bullied him.
Yeah, there's this good video I watched. It was a body language analysis of that whole thing that I thought was really, really interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the guy that was doing the body language was like praising Chris Rock's composure.
Yeah, he
really,
he recovered really quickly from getting slapped.
Yeah, and he could have like verbally took him down pretty hard, but he's just like, the show needs to go on.
Yeah, and he could have sued him too, which he didn't.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, I think he's not the type. From like the different interviews, he's not the type of person to confront people.
Yeah,
create drama.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's not that type of person.
Yeah,
obviously,
Jim Carrey wanted him to sue for $200 million.
Holy shit! Obviously, Will Smith is that kind of character. I'm gonna slap you for a joke that I liked until I found out my wife didn't like it.
Yeah, and then for some reason, some TV channel, has been playing like Will Smith marathon movies. So it's like they've been playing like a bunch of Will Smith movies. So they had Suicide Squad on there. They had that movie where he's like an old, retired, like an assassin, and he has to fight like a younger version of himself, Gemini Man.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Yeah. Those are the only two I've seen that they've been playing. Not sure why they put a Will Smith marathon on there, but I guess I don't know if it's something they had already planned or they were trying to capitalize on the,
I bet they're just trying to capitalize on it. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so it's funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's so hilarious.
So about tomorrow, did you get the link that I sent you?
Oh yeah, for the site.
Yeah, that's the new site because our old site I think is based in Russia, so that one don't work anymore.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that, and I read the book the other day, the Halo: The Fall of Reach.
Okay, I finished it last night.
Cool.
I was like, man, this is pretty decent. It's not bad.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we'll talk about that.
It doesn't have any crazy prose, but it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, we'll talk. So we're talking about that on your channel tomorrow, of course, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the book and that first episode of Halo. There's only 2 episodes out. If you want to watch both, great. But if not, I wanted to at least talk about the first episode in relation to like this book.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that for sure. So yeah, for everyone watching, check that out on Dusty's channel tomorrow, Woke Centrist. And yeah, thanks for watching us talk about the Lord of the Rings Rings of Power teaser trailer and people's interesting but dumb takes on it, like Lauren Southern and Michael Malice and their weird obsession with the race of the characters, and our talk about some perhaps legitimate criticisms and comparison to the Wheel of Time adaptation. So, and yeah, I think sometime next week between Wednesday and Friday, I'm going to be finally talking with Ben Burgess. We're going to do that discussion about the anti-capitalist history of anarchists, the philosophical tautologies and faith claims of Austrian economists who anarcho-capitalists like, and also that philosopher Alexander Dugin, who supposedly has a large influence on Putin. And I asked him, but he didn't answer this yet. We might also talk about that whole drama that I heard about yesterday between Crystal Ball and AOC about the Amazon workers unions.
Yeah,
So
I caught some wind of that. I was like, man, that's some pretty interesting stuff going on.
yeah, I've never seen Crystal Ball get into Twitter drama before.
with a House of Representatives.
I'm interested to see the opinion of that from a lefty I respect, like Ben Burgess.
Well, I think he's probably going to take the side of the worker, which is.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's basically on Crystal Ball's side of this.
Yeah, because it's really the guy who's running that union effort. So, the Justice Democrats and AOC is supposed to be all about union making, and wasn't even there. Said that they weren't doing any events, and then she shows up at the freaking Met Gala like a bunch of rich ass people.
To show off her booty and complain to rich people while participating in their rich people event.
Yeah. So, and then she was being like glib online. Oh, Mike, this is in another district. Again, but yeah, but your people work there.
And as Crystal Ball pointed out, the Met Gala is also not in her district.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
check that out as well. And hopefully next weekend we can finally talk about Norse mythology with Parker. If not, maybe we'll do another political chat with Chris and maybe Shizan, or maybe we'll do that movie chat on the Matrix. We'll figure it out. Hopefully Parker can talk about Norse mythology too. He's had some things going on and has been kind of busy lately, but yeah, we'll figure that out for next weekend. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Check out those future videos. Click that like button, subscribe, click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos, and check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of the video as always. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And fantasy nerd things like Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power and Game of Thrones and Dresden Files and Wheel of Time are all awesome things, and you should read lots of fantasy books and watch all these movies and TV shows and nerd out with us about them. All right. And yeah, check out Dusty's channel, Woke Centrist, tomorrow, where we'll talk about that Halo show in the Fall of Reach book. And anything else you want to say before we end it there, Dusty?
No, that'll be all. Just join us tomorrow for some Halo.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, everyone. And adios until next time.